Hi, this is attorney David Gibbs with the National Center for Life and Liberty. We wanted to bring you this important update as many churches and ministries across America have gone through probably the most unusual Easter as we're still facing this unprecedented time of pandemic with COVID-19 across the nation. Our office has been monitoring and staying updated on these situations, staying coordinated with the different governor's offices as well as the White House task force. And the question on the minds of many is, when can my church reopen? When can we start moving towards regular services or a more normal schedule of gathering? Now, at the National Center for Life and Liberty, we don't tell churches what to do. It's our pleasure to give them what we believe is good information, both from the law and an understanding of what's going on, and that if you give good people good information, they can go forward and make good decisions. Now, what we know at this point about the pandemic is, number one, it is highly contagious. It is easily spread. We know there's more vulnerable populations. It has proven true that the elderly, the immune compromised, or those with vulnerable pulmonary systems are most at risk. But in a good news is the rate of death is higher than the flu or typical viruses, but it does not appear to be as severe as originally thought. I think we can almost view this as an answer to prayer that the predicted fatalities that were originally estimated to be in excess of hundreds of thousands here in the United States are way lower. Now, I think that is just something we need to be thankful for, that really God has heard and answered prayer, and also the social distancing and the care that's been going on in the society has made a difference and saved lives. Now, in the church community, there are sometimes extremes that resonate. Some people believe that this is just a hoax, or that the virus is somehow conspiratorially directed at the country. On the other hand, folks are living in absolute fear and don't plan to resume services hardly, if ever, in their organization. And I would encourage you to stay balanced. The Bible talks about letting your moderation be known, that as you look at this situation, that you look at it thoughtfully and you kind of ask yourself a few questions. Question number one, what is best for your church? Now, every church is different. And so this is an individualized analysis. When we talk to churches about safety and security plans, for example, there's always a difference. If you're a smaller church in the country with one person watching the parking lot versus a larger church with thousands of people coming in and out in a major city with a higher crime rate, your safety plan has to be individualized. And so when we start talking about resuming services or opening up and doing more as a church, you're going to have to evaluate what is best for your church. How old is your congregation? What is the situation? And get that analysis done. Number two, you are going to have to examine what mandates are in place in your state or locality. It's going to be very important to understand there's going to be some conflicting mandates, recommendations. Some states will remain more closed down. Others are going to work to open up more quickly. And so understanding what the mandates are in your area is very important. But then number three, and we've encouraged this from the beginning, is what is the best testimony for your church? We certainly want to remember it's not just about the institution or even the offerings, but what is best for the people? What is best for the testimony? What is best for those that are in the medical profession or those that are in government? Long after this pandemic is being analyzed historically, we're going to have to live with our testimony as local churches in communities. And we always encourage churches to analyze and to think through, what is our testimony? What would the Lord have us do that would be most effective under these circumstances? Now, as a church, as a ministry, when you evaluate this and you begin to open your church back up and begin to resume some public gathering and more normal service schedule, I do want to remind you right now, things are going to be different. To just go back to the way it was before the pandemic would be not advisable. And we're encouraging churches that as you open up, that you're very careful to have good safety guidelines in place to help minimize the unnecessary spread of this virus. Number one, you're going to have to put precautions in place to keep your people healthy. Now, at the NCLL, we have prepared a list, and you can certainly generate your own. But as you look at the recommended guidelines that we've put together, you can adopt as many of these as you would like, but let me just go through a few. All congregants, including pastoral staff and greeting teams, should work to maintain physical separation of approximately 6 feet. That's the distancing, unless they're from the same household. And then avoiding physical contact, including shaking hands. Now, I understand that's a church culture, but right now it would be advisable to temporarily break that and have no physical contact. We're recommending that announcements be made from the pulpit and signs should be posted requesting no physical contact and listing appropriate physical separation guidelines. We've prepared and made available for free for churches that would like it. You can go to our website and download these, and something to this effect where people are getting the message that we are trying to take things seriously and make sure that we don't unnecessarily allow this disease to be spread. Another recommendation, if you're going to take children into your care away from their parents, we're recommending that you have a process in place where the temperature is taken of every child. At that point, you will then make sure that whether they go into a nursery or children's program away from their parent, that you have done everything you can to make sure that there's no sick children that would quickly transmit a disease or the virus within the other children. This is something we've been recommending to the preschools and others that have stayed open for the essential workers during this time. But those type of policies and practices should be in place. So if a church is going to open, it's important for them to acknowledge that they do need to have precautions in place. Number two, you do need to assess your state and local mandates. Very important for churches to understand, are we in compliance? Are we exercising judgment and going to be out of compliance? But assessing what they are, knowing what they are, understanding them is very important. And then number three, determining your strategy for what we call fallout. If the police were to come or if someone were to file a complaint against the ministry, how would we respond? Now, I want to give some very important advice here to every pastor and ministry leader. Please follow the directives given to you by law enforcement. If they show up on the scene and they may be wrong constitutionally, they may not understand the mandate, but please do not complicate your situation by resisting arrest, by showing disrespect, by being potentially charged with obstruction of justice or disrespecting an officer. There's other charges they can slap onto you. Show respect to your law enforcement. Obey their directives, and then contact us, and we will be able to guide you through the legal process. But we want to make sure that we don't have any unnecessary incidents or arguments, because that could change the dialogue. It's very important that we guard our spirits here. Now, at the NCLL, I've always said we want to take the right stand. That will line up with the Word of God. Number two, we want to do it the right way, and arguing with the law enforcement officer is not the appropriate forum. And then number three, we want to do it with the right spirit. And again, that is our testimony. So make sure that you have a plan who will speak to law enforcement, how it will be handled, and what your approach will be. Now, if you make the determination that you are going to potentially open against a state or local mandate, and again, these need to be prayerful and thoughtful, because we as an organization do not tell churches what to do. We help guide them in their thinking. I would, number one, recommend that you document all of the procedures that you're putting in place to keep your congregation safe. These procedures need to be in writing, they need to be posted, they need to be made available where people understand that you are not trying to create an unnecessary health risk. Number two, that you record all of your events and services. Now, this is not just for people to watch, but this is for your legal protection, that if someone were to say this church was shaking hands, they were sitting clustered, there were sick people in the room, everyone is exposed, and you as a pastor say, well, no, that's not true, we didn't do that. Having a video as best evidence of what occurred in your auditorium, to be able to document that you were acting safely, that you were acting prudently, that you were acting wisely. And then very important here, and I'm re-stressing this point, that you are prepared for what might happen. Your people could be cited if they're in violation of a mandate. You as the church could be criminally or civilly cited, and you as a pastor could be. And understanding those consequences and having a plan in place to wisely respond is very important. Now, we are recommending to churches that you realize it's going to be kind of a gradual roll into the service schedule again. We're recommending that you evaluate where you are at in the risk factor. And let's talk about low infection areas, medium infection areas, and high infection areas. Now, this is statistical and maybe just giving generalizations here. If you're in a low infection area, this is going to be more in the country, more rural, probably smaller churches. We would advise that you kind of look at a May the 17th as a potential reopen date that you schedule towards. Now, this is after Mother's Day. This allows you to begin having some public services. You may not want to have all your outreaches or all your services, but to begin a plan towards reopening on May the 17th. If you're in a medium infection area, now this is going to be maybe the bigger cities, the suburbs, you may not be a hot spot, but you have larger crowds or you have more infections in your area, to begin thinking about June the 7th. Going through the month of May and beginning to open up in June would seem to be where many are recommending. If you're in a higher infection area, these could be hot spots. You're probably going to be limited to looking at July. Again, major cities, areas like New York City, New Orleans, and others that have struggled. You're in the city, you're probably going to be at a longer time period where it would be advisable for you to consider a reopening strategy. Now, I would encourage you to recognize we are giving these as guidelines. We will stand behind any church that wants to step forward and do this with a good spirit. And I would encourage people to remember doing what's best for your people. This is not just about the institution or the organization or the budget, but what is best for your community? What is the best testimony you can have? We are but one counselor. I believe the scripture is very clear. In the multitude of counselors, there's safety, there's wisdom, there's prudence. And so we would encourage you to start planning towards reopening your church, to think about doing it in a phased strategic approach, doing it in a way that is safe and appropriate for all of those that attend your services. And then lastly, let me also mention, you're going to have some people that are fearful. Some of your older members, some of the people that have health issues. And please don't put any pressure or guilt on anyone. Still retain ways that they can be ministered to at home. It's going to be very important as we move forward that we do this in a way that honors and pleases the Lord. At the National Center for Life and Liberty, we're available to you. Our team is coaching and working with churches across the nation. You can reach out to us at ncll.org.